So when we're working with people and horses, a lot of times when you're really in the zone, you'll be feeling something, and all of a sudden information just floods to you and it comes to you. And then all of a sudden you go into this, and all of a sudden there's this crazy healing. But it's like it wasn't actually something that you had programmed in your mind. You just honored the space. And when you honor the space from a place of love, dang, it's like it just moves, and so I actually feel like every muscle in a horse and in a human holds an energetic story.
Welcome to the Herd is Calling podcast. This is where we break free from conventional norms to explore the art, science, and wonder of the horse-human connection. I'm Josh Williams, and together with my wife Victoria, we're your hosts. Our mission is to inspire and empower you to improve the lives of horses. Subscribe to the Herd is Calling on Substack for behind-the-scenes stories and unique content. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome to the Herd is Calling podcast. We are so honored to have Josh Nichol join us today. I'm going to introduce him briefly, and then we'll get started with some questions. Even from his younger years, it was readily apparent to those around him that Josh Nichol had a remarkable gift when it came to interacting with horses. Under the guidance of world-class mentors, Josh quickly learned his life's calling, continually seeking and developing better methods of creating long-lasting relationships with one of God's most fascinating and beautiful creatures. Driven by a passion for connecting with and understanding the needs of horses, Josh has created a transformative approach to horsemanship, relational horsemanship. Welcome to the podcast, Josh. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Excited to visit with you guys.
Yeah, likewise. We have been listening to a few of your podcasts already, and I love your energy. I love your message. I just love everything you're doing out there.
You bet. You bet.
In some of this work that we do, we start with why. We really dial down what someone's deepest intention is with working with horses. I was reading your bio and I thought, that's a good why when I read continually seeking and developing better methods of creating long-lasting relationships with one of God's most fascinating and beautiful creatures. It's like, that's a good why.
I think the desire in everyone's soul is to find and be in more connection with everything around us. We live in a world where self-preservation based on many reasonings, whether it's trauma or lack of education, not learning, we begin living in a great defensive mechanism. And then we begin seeing that lens in everything we do. Our soul desires relationship, but yet we have these lenses that we can't actually build relationship through. And it begins this crazy cycle of brokenness. I look at things very universally. What I mean is that I think all things really do seek relationship. As we begin to understand it more deeply within ourselves, it allows us to build it with everything around us. So my horsemanship principles have primarily been based off of this desire to understand myself and recognize what it means to be in relationship on this earth with all the things around me. It's a continuous journey. You're always learning and always growing, but I feel like there's this flow of feel and awareness that illuminates the path. As you get it right in relationship, there's this sensation that just kind of lets you know you're on the right track. And it's the same with horses, because the horses are kind of guiding us there. They let us know when things are right, and they let us know when we're kind of off track. And as soon as we relinquish the sense that it's about obedience or disobedience or disrespect, we allow the voice of the horse to actually begin communicating. And then they can really become a new lens for us, because everyone is somewhat married to their own lens. So they kind of think that the way they look at things is right or is a justified perspective. But the horses really help us with that, because they can reflect, well, they do reflect things, and our presence and our energy is so felt by them. So as we begin to walk with that lens rather than reflect against it, it draws us to something much deeper within ourselves, and that just changes life's journey. And that's kind of what it's done for me. And then you just start sharing that.
Beautifully said. Yeah, beautifully said. When I hear you talk, some of your messaging really resonates with us. We're big fans of mythology and the hero's quest. Are you familiar with Joseph Campbell's work in mythology? Here he talks
Yeah,
about.
not really.
Yeah, check him out. You would love him.
Mhm.
Joseph Campbell, he's an older scholar. What he does is he finds the consiliency and the connection between
Mm,
like different mythological stories and
mm,
finds symbolism that really relates through culture and time. And a lot of what folks like us are doing with horses is we're finding
mm,
that consiliency in our journey with horses. What I heard you saying there was like that inward journey. It's like you kind of have to drop below the surface to like the subconscious realm or whatever you want to
mm,
call it, the mystical realm, to do that. And I'm just curious, like, when did that happen to you? Like, were you just a young guy like
mm,
thinking this stuff, or did you have an experience that
mm.
opened your eyes to it?
Yeah, good question. When I was younger, we lived in a very remote town in Northern Ontario, actually. There wasn't much going on there, and we lived pretty much outside. Being connected to the natural space was a little bit more there. We didn't have television or, really anything of technological nature. And I also had parents that encouraged curiosity, which was cool. So then you have these combinations of, I would say, a certain natural gifting within myself to kind of desire that, combined with being outside all the time and then not being discouraged. That was really, really a great combination of things. And then we moved to Alberta in 92. And then it really came to me. We had horses always, but I only was with the horses. I didn't really consider, we rode and we did stuff, but it was more so just kind of being with them and doing things. It wasn't this concept of training, which actually came to mind when we got to Alberta. By that point, I would say that I had a certain sense of confidence within this path of growth and connection, unbeknownst to myself. I would say and then you start living in life, and then what I found actually was quite hard in the beginning, because then life contrasts against that feel, but you don't have a confidence really in your awareness, or skill sets to navigate the waters. So then it bumped me around a little, but the horses were always this place of safety. So I found that I actually had a quarter horse when I was in my teen years, and he was just a wonderful space holder during my struggling periods in school and whatever. I would just go and lay on his back backwards, and he'd just graze, and I sometimes would fall asleep, or I would just lay there with him, and he was always seemingly able to kind of stabilize the balance within me. And again, I didn't really know what was going on, but I was always drawn to maybe kind of being pulled to that direction. Then I slowly got kind of pulled into picking up some tougher horses. That's when the challenge comes of trying to use conventional approach with a horse that fought against conventional approach, to then start diving you into something's not right here, something must shift. So then it was kind of a time when a lot of the things that stirred in me contrasted against some of the thinking styles that I had observed in moving out here and kind of trying to learn and working horses, that it just wasn't the answer. But yet within me, it was still calling to some greater relationship. So that really set a tone for me to just kind of, I don't know, try to figure out what that meant. And I've had a chance to ride with some pretty amazing people. The struggle I always observed was that there was this sense of capacity within great riders, great horsemen, horsewomen, and then what they would tell people to do, it wasn't necessarily what they were doing. Like there was something else going on within their way and their frequency and their movements. It was something else. And then people were learning mechanics. They were learning the movement, and that became kind of my journey, was to start understanding what was going on there and what was happening within a person that allowed them to build those types of connections. And I guess that's what's kind of drawn out this idea that I call the universal language, which is that there is this flow. There is this way where all things can connect, and there's this frequency that isn't just in physical movement or physical direction, but yet it's just dropping into a different state. It's maybe more energetic, but it's inner awareness and following a certain feel. I've really made it a desire of mine to understand it more deeply. And I think one of my gifts actually is that people wanted to spend time and learn from me for quite a while now. It's been over 20 years. And one of the privileges of that was that I was never trying to be something I wasn't. And as I started to teach, I would always share with people, I'm happy to give you what I've got, but I'm always learning. So in the process, it was almost as if I was developing a program that layered upon the learning of the process, which I found was really helpful to people. Now my whole goal is just to unlock within people a way. I call it the way. It's like a way of being that allows us to understand what is actually needed in the currency of life for connection, rather than let's not look at that stuff and just do things, which is naturally what the self-preserving world would like. We desire connection, but it means looking inside, which is hard. So then we generally don't do that, but we still want to do stuff. So then we want to learn technique and process in hopes that it might satisfy that inner desire. So generally, people like me when they're kind of ready to dive in, and would struggle if they would just like stuff to do. It's not that I don't do things, but there's always an intention on focusing on what's happening within. Yeah, as we journey through that, it brings peace within ourselves, which then establishes peace with the things around us. And in this case, we're talking about horses. And from that base, doing things is entirely different. Maybe that's more than you asked for, but that seems to sum up kind of my picture.
Yeah, that's great. It was a big question. So,
Yeah.
There's so much in what you said. I'm just like soaking it up. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's so interesting that, you've been doing this a long time. You've been working with people and horses for over 20 years. And yet, what I heard you say is when the magic, the thing that moves you is the quality of vulnerability in your teaching. Like you come to it with this learner mindset. I'm in this is my journey too. And sharing that piece
Mhm.
of you and that piece of the process. Can you speak to that in terms of like how you think that resonates with your students?
Well, I think it allows them to recognize that we're not any different. As soon as a teacher or anyone with influence begins to put on the mask that they have to have it sorted out, this begins to be the downfall of their potential. When we can just vulnerably be in this journey together, and maybe in certain areas that I might be mentoring another, maybe I am a few steps ahead, or I might have something to offer, or yeah, I would have guidance for them. But the reality is that this is a journey. This is just a journey. You actually don't really want the end. This is a journey, right? So when we can really buy into the beauty of the quality of the process, for me, that's where it all lies. So it's an everyday, every breath kind of thing, and all I can share is what's real to me. And I think that's where the beauty of the authenticity comes, because truly, vulnerability is actually deeper strength. It's the ability to just show up and be present. But if we really get with horses, you just recognize that without that, you can't even begin. As soon as that's not there, it's subtle perspectives of dominance. You have to tell the horse to do something that you're not modeling. And what the horses see, leadership to me is not, it's not about making the horse do things and getting them to do stuff. It's being an example of something so that things draw to your presence. You become an energy that stuff desires to be around and feels safe with. And that's where the inner work really, when you really see that concept, it's like, if without doing the inner work, it is dominance in subtle ways, where you're having to manipulate what you desire when the horse can sense that it's not happening within you. But the beauty of horses is that they don't ask you to be perfect. They just want to sense that that's the journey you're on. And if they feel you're in that space and you're walking that walk or trying to, there's a different way you ask questions. There's a empathy to the way you engage, because now you resonate with, I get it. I know that it's not, I know this isn't easy. I know, because I'm working on vulnerability and I'm working on things that are challenging to me. And I recognize I'm asking you this thing that's hard, but I'm going to walk here with you and we're going to do this together. So I talk a lot in my work about like kind of green, yellow, red, is kind of like green being a kind of a regulated state, and yellow being kind of where we're being challenged to growth and change, and then red being where there's dysregulation. This whole model of being able to learn how to walk into pressure, or like walk into things that are hard, is such a big piece, because so for so many, we desire green, we desire regulation, we desire that state of peace, but yet it's the space of yellow that actually causes us to become dysregulated, which actually makes green smaller, because now every time we go into challenge, we don't know how to handle it. So then we want calm and peace, but then slowly yellow just keeps intruding on our world. And so pretty soon we have a very tiny world. And I see this with people and their horses, because we don't want dysregulation. We want our horses regulated. We want to be regulated. But as of late, and this is just an example of the question, primarily it was green, yellow, red, but now it's green, yellow, red, gold. And gold being when we have developed the skill set within ourselves to allow green and yellow to meld together to journey through red. Now we've got to a place where life is something that we can walk in powerfully. walk in with empowerment, because it's not, red doesn't then control us to the point where we have to make our world small again. So going into green state is huge and important, and necessary, so that we can reset ourselves and calm our systems, but gaining the capacity to continue journeying through yellow, so that our green mindsets, combined with the challenges of life, allow us to thrive. And so I really love that concept of what does it take to develop a thriving state, and that honestly is all that I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to journey in that and learn more in it, because the desire that we all have is gold. It's not just green. You see, green is that state of resetting, but gold is when we can walk in our lives in empowered states and really embrace why we're here and the uniqueness of every individual. I think that's why there's really no competition in my world, because all of us have been made so beautifully different. And when we can be together, we can glean from the uniqueness of everybody. And that's just when the beauty really shines. So developing a space where it's really not even about me having it sorted out, but just honoring the call of me sharing truthfully, like truthfully what's real and going on for me, is what does two things. It gives people an insight, but it also allows them to be in a frequency where they can feel a person intending to do that, which I actually feel like it's that frequency that sets people free. It's not just the information, because as we know on Facebook and social media, it's full of unique, excellent quotes. But if these quotes don't transform us, if it doesn't come into, if the green information doesn't transform us when we're in our yellow, then the yellow, it pushes us to our old tendencies. So then transformed energies are truly what set the leadership path for growth. And I would say that that's really all I'm trying to do. So it's actually really easy, because I just have to be myself, and I just have to share what's going on for me in authenticity and vulnerability, and things change. It's fun and not necessarily easy on the perspective of demand. We're working, we're all working. But yet when you're walking in your own authenticity, you gain universal energy, because you're following the purpose that you're called to. So then, it's pretty charging. It's when you're not walking in your calling that you gain inner exhaustion, because you're trying to power it with your physical energy rather than a bigger calling. Um, Anyways, kind of deviating from your question there, but not sure if that answers it or not.
Yeah, no, bravo. That was beautiful. Yeah, I just want to recognize too, just because as teachers and curriculum builders, I love how you put that together with the green, yellow, red, and the gold. That was just a wonderful analogy. And that was really, really nice. We often speak in similar tones too, that it's not just all about things being awesome all the time. It's about being able to go in that circle, you go in that regulation or the ladder, different ways of explaining it. And you spoke to the calling too, like you came back to the hero's quest there. Like the first step is to answer the calling, and you go on this journey and you go on the quest. You spoke to beginner's mind, not thinking you have all the answers, and working cooperatively with students is more of a community, and it's like the herd is stronger together, right? So spoke to not competition. We couldn't agree more with that too. It's like we live in a world that's so divided right now. And I have found, and I've been involved with several different kind of micro niches and communities over the course of life. And it always has shocked me about how people clash within those small worlds. And I'm thinking, oh, you guys think the same thing. You should be getting along. And there's not very many of you out there either. So let's like all join together and grow this thing. And I'm curious, just on that topic of community, Josh, is that I didn't get a chance to do a deep dive like in your programs and stuff, but I assume that's probably a pretty big aspect of what you're doing. Could you speak maybe a little bit to that, just the power of community and this sort of different way of looking and relating to horses and how that manifests in your world?
Yeah, there's always the potential thread of division is generally based on when things touch our self-preserving states or our self-preserving triggers. So when people are in community and they're conversing about certain things, when things are talked about that trigger a person in a certain way, now that person has had their potential sense to divide, to protect, touched. And in my world, that's actually the point of conversation, not the topic point. See, this is the problem: is we talk about topic points instead of what builds community. And see, this is the same as the horses. See, we talk about getting over a jump or crossing the water or getting in a trailer, we don't talk about what's going on under the surface of what is stopping the horse from feeling safe enough to do so. So the heart of community for me is when we have the ability to actually talk about what's going on under the surface. And the problem is we keep talking about things. We're not talking about the way. We're not talking about the way we communicate about what's going on under the surface. And until that becomes more prevalent, that we can actually answer the call of what's creating division, not the topic of doing an event or whatever, we're missing the point. So for me, in horsemanship, we talk primarily about meeting the needs of a horse. Relational horsemanship, the kind of general concept is that when our horses struggle, it's because there's an unmet need. It has nothing to do with obedience. It has the fact that the horse is struggling because they don't feel safe. And then I say reactive horsemanship or emotional horsemanship, which is slightly not descriptive enough anymore, is that you judge the horse's actions by disrespect and dominance. The horse is doing something actively trying to be bad or get away with things, which charges pressure by those negative emotions. Okay, and this is what happens in life. People hear something, but they hear it through the lens of attack, judgment, criticism, based on their own value. So they're hearing it through this broken lens. So the challenge of developing community is to develop it off the right pillars. And so then I do everything in my power to continually bring it back to what is going on in this community that builds it. Because as soon as we focus on things rather than the pillars of communication, the pillars of trust, the pillars of support, we begin missing the point. So there's always a thread of possibility in every experience for division if we focus not on what is true and important, but as soon as we focus on the undercurrents and then we load the topic point above it, it's an entirely different story, because now we're being heard. We're listening from a different place. We're taking responsibility for ourselves. Now this is where good communication comes from. Again, that's the universal thread. So when we're not speaking from that universal space, when we're not communicating from there, it's very challenging for people not to be triggered, because life's hard. So many people have been broken and actively attacked because of another insecurity. So then when they hear things, we're hearing it from that space. We're not hearing it from a healthy space, from a healthy community, you see, and so then it's just always a twisted lens. So generally yes, community is a massive thing to me, and trying to influence and hold space for a mindset that allows us to prioritize relationship at the center of things. And that's really what, this idea of relational horsemanship is. We added horsemanship to it, but the concept is, what does it mean to be in relationship with? So if you and I are talking about something, the priority is relationship, and then we talk about something, whether it's bits or saddling or trailer loading or spurs or whatever it might be. What does it mean to be in relationship with those things and not make judgments of those things based on poor handling, or for me to walk inside of my struggles and then throw them at you as we begin to have conversation. And that's the beginning of the breakdown of anything. It's a matter of trying to be led by that, and then trying to establish a community that's based on those pillars. Now, we're all doing our best, so that's the process, but that's what it is for me. So the website, building a space online, presence in social media, is all to just continue to feed energy and power into that mindset, to continue encouraging that.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah.
I want to just say Josh Nichol for president. I know that you're I know that you're a Canadian, so maybe that won't work.
Hey friends, Josh here. We've launched a free community for The Herd is Calling. It's on Substack. Subscribe to join thoughtful discussions and access exclusive content. It's as easy to use as social media, but so much better because social media. Am I right? In the words of John Lennon, a dream you dream alone is only a dream, but a dream you dream together is reality. Like the wisdom of the herd, we are stronger together. Click the link nearby to subscribe and get in on the conversation. Now, back to the pod.
I heard you say, and I can't remember exactly where, you said, y'all don't recognize, but y'all are professional meditators. Just most of us meditate on sucky things.
Yeah, that's good.
Sounds like me.
Yeah. And I love that, because I think that also gets to what you're talking about too, with just like, what's the intention and how are we showing up, and what are we charging? Like, I love when you talk about energy in that way. Like, what are we charging this? Is it positive or negative? And I was wondering, we do a lot of meditation. We practice a lot of breath work. We work with our students in that way. I was wondering if you have any kind of practice that you adhere to.
Yeah. Yes, I do. The idea of, everyone is a professional meditator. It speaks to the fact that there's this organ within us, that I look at it as an actual organ, like my heart or my lungs, that there's this organ, and the organ is when you have thoughts or experiences and you combine that with energy. As you charge it, it grows brain and perspective. So what people don't recognize is that because we haven't been brought up with this perspective, that's happening. But most of it is charged by self-preservation, anxiety, and fear. So now we're charging things in anxiety, self-preservation, and fear, which then our brain says, okay, that's what's real to us. So then that's where triggers come from, because now the brain is seeking out making that real and being aware of those things. So now this organ that's just there to be of service is now primarily serving the triggers. So now, as we talked about earlier, where we have this conflict in a conversation, we're supposed to be doing good things, and now there's conflict. It's because everybody's triggers are getting touched, and it's actually flaming us into self-preservation, because that organ is being used to protect us instead of create a thriving environment. So if I look at that organ, then we say, okay, well, then what does it mean to use that organ to the greater service of my greater good? The first thing is that we have to get it to become still, so it's not running past perspectives. And that's where meditation comes in for me, is stillness work, meditation, music, breath work, all of these things, anything that can bring you to stillness, so the system stops. So for me, meditation is really about being mindful that I can bring myself to a place where the system stops, which then the organ says, okay, well, then what are we doing? If we're not running past perspectives, then we need something. So I will use breath work, very important. Meditation. I love music. Music brings me into a state of feel, and that's a form of quieting and stilling. And then I talk about proactive meditation. And proactive meditation is then the act of being able to be still in the midst of. So while someone's speaking, can I be still? Well, I'm working with a horse. Am I able to resonate and move in a stillness so that I can feel what's going on, instead of already running a tape and navigating the moment from my past? So we're always running our past instead of being really present to be in the moment. So then, without the ability to proactively meditate, and I had somebody compare that to Tai Chi, where it's like we're acting in an energy. You're actually gaining the ability of the capacity to speak from stillness or presence, to move in stillness and presence, where you're not reacting out of tensions based on your past anticipations of self-preservation. And then from there, we move to being able to interact with it. So if I can be it, and I can move in it, and I can think in it, and I can process my words from a place of stillness, then the next question is if I then meet an energy that doesn't match it, can I still retain myself? And that's empowered. That's an empowered forward mind, because that's the greatest challenge. Is a lot of us can go and meditate, and we can do our breath work, and we can maybe act in it, but as soon as we bump up against resistance, this is where the greatest challenge comes, because now our self-preservation flames up and says, you're in danger. Because the human mind can go to self-preservation by thought alone, but animals don't. They need stimulus. So then all you have to do is say something to me a certain way, and now I'm in self-preservation. That's the universal language. It's stillness. It's being able to present that stillness in action, motion, and words, and then gain the ability to feel another space and be able to just be me and retain my own way, whether it's simple conversation, simple communication, the presence of another, or conflict. And the mastery is when you can get to a place where you are entirely able to be yourself and allow another to totally be themselves. And that's where great power comes in the transition of change, because now my what I practice now has an emanating capacity that isn't dependent upon my environment. And that's truly where empowerment grows, because when, like our horses, if our horse's okayness is environmentally conditioned, this is not okay.
Right.
Okay. And if people's okayness is environmentally conditioned, that it has to be a still harbor for them to be okay, this is a very restricted life, because the harbor, this life is life. It doesn't stay still. So it's gaining this capacity. So for me, the practice of this is so that I can navigate the waters of life and still be with myself in as much empowerment as possible. And it's only when I can be me at a higher frequency than what's going on around me that my antidote is experienced. And that's the key for everybody, is that the uniqueness of every individual's antidote is only experienced when they are not controlled by what's going on around them. So that's the three-part active state. And I'll actually practice this in meditation. So the first part of meditation is to become still, and the second part is to be able to actually feel myself. And I'll actually, from the warrior perspective in me, I'll talk about it as going to war in meditation, is that I'm actually I'll work on experiencing something crazy going on around me, and actually build pathways as to how I want to be way before it happens. So then I'm building brain paths. And so then it's like, how did that not cause you to lose it? How did that horse not cause you to, well, because I'm active with it. I'm intending to build that. But most of us, we're hot wired, just like the simpleness of a community get together for a good cause, but they can't get together because we're not actively releasing each other with any forethought. There's this unconscious system that's always running, and as soon as someone touches it, it's over, because you're now, I'm judging, and I'm versus, it's like allowing people to just be who they are and then continue to be the antidote that you are. And that is what to me unleashes the antidote of individual blessing and individual uniqueness. That's part of my everyday work. And you know how it is, some days you feel like you're nailing it, and other days you feel like you can't even find yourself. So that's just life. But yeah, that would be kind of a nutshell of how I look at that. But yeah.
You use the word antidote. I love that word. And of course, we work with horses. That's our artistic medium, our mode of
Hmm.
inspiration, and understanding that that could be replaced with a lot of different things. There's a
Hmm.
universality. One of our passions is working with people that work in equine therapy or equine
Mm.
assisted services, equine guided learning.
Mm.
Everything that we've been talking about thus far has been very like deep inner work relating to personal growth, self-discovery, healing, which really relates well to that world. One of the reasons that we are so inspired to do that, we were interviewing a friend of ours. She's a parent coach, kind of famous in that world. She helped start the industry in many ways. And so she's helped thousands and thousands of families. And it was almost, like experiences just kind of come to you out of nowhere. And you're like, where'd that come from? That happened when I was talking to her, and I just could sense the thousands of families, all the people she's helped.
Mm.
It was overwhelming. It was like I just couldn't, could barely process it at the time. I was still working it out actually. And that opportunity to help people, I
Hmm.
guess, is
Hmm.
something that really, we're really passionate about.
There's a ripple effect there that is just like infinite, maybe even.
Hmm.
Yeah, I believe it's truly infinite, because the impact, it goes backwards in times. Like it might heal your relationships in the past, might heal traumas that
Hmm.
happened to you in the past. It
Hmm.
moves forward into your relations with your spouse, with your kids, with
Hmm.
everybody you interact with. And then it just keeps rebounding from there. It just keeps going,
Hmm.
keeps going, keeps going. So
Hmm.
I just think that's so inspiring. But I'd love to hear if you had any experiences, in those fields, particular, a little bit outside of the traditional horsemanship route.
Hmm. Yeah, I've absolutely found that the work with horses allows people to find themselves, because the horse is just a medium. They're not trying to make you look good or bad. And then this perspective allows us to kind of understand ourselves in a more relational way. So yeah, I've found a lot of people come to me, and the uniqueness for me is that I don't have training in therapy or any of those pieces. And the purity that I found in it is that I don't actually intend to do therapy or anything in my sessions. I really try to honor and respect the uniqueness of professionalism. But what ends up happening is that I really try to observe the frequency and the feelings of transition and change with the horses and the people, and then I'll bring to light the connections and the transitions and the changes, because my eye and my attunement is to those things. And when people are shifting and changing and affected, we'll talk about the undercurrents, which has a massive impact, because I'm not trying to just talk about certain details from a training necessarily. I'm allowing the moment to whatever's coming up to be observed, to be discussed, to be kind of brought out. And so then a lot of times the work just ends up happening. It's not very often when people are working with me initially that they're not weeping, at some point, because you just end up talking to the undercurrents rather than just laying on more things. You're laying on new techniques or new ideas. It's like we're taking those off, and we're allowing what the horse is actually trying to talk to be felt and heard. And as soon as you do that, when that cork pops, it ends up being so I don't actually uh try to do it. I'm just allowing for authentic connections to be developed, and I feel areas that don't have resonance, and then we'll kind of move into those spaces. So sometimes that's me bringing resonance, and as people feel resonance in certain spots, that brings peace, and that breaks the flood. Or sometimes it's just bringing light to it. It's allowing the person to see or to feel how their horse is experiencing them. Because in a lot of ways, I'm intending to just represent the horses and how the horses are feeling, like what's going on there. And instead of focusing on what the horse is not doing, which is in me the bigger error in the intention of horsemanship, is that we're just focusing on what the horse isn't doing that I want, because now it's out of scarcity and lack rather than out of clarity and communication. So that's just brought in a plethora of people, to gain that insight and that skill set. I've had a few really cool therapists that have actually come and worked with me to kind of lay that into what they're doing, because it develops a different eye, a different insight to the frequency and feeling of what's happening, rather than looking to create opportunities for conversation, which is another excellent form that it starts conversations. But to actually feel the insightfulness of the horse's energetic effect, the impact of the horses, what's happening in the currency as those things move together. And that's kind of my deal. Is I'm uh, intending to be a certain frequency, present a certain frequency, and then feel frequency. And then as we become still in frequency, a story is written. That's exactly what you just shared. Was you were still in the space as someone in frequency powerfully spoke, and that brought a story to you. So when we're working with people and horses, a lot of times when you're really in the zone, you'll be feeling something, and all of a sudden information just floods to you, and it comes to you, and then all of a sudden you go into this, and all of a sudden there's this crazy healing. But it's like it wasn't actually something that you had programmed in your mind. You just honored the space, and when you honor the space from a place of love, dang, it's like it just moves, and so I actually feel like every muscle in a horse and in a human holds an energetic story. And it's a little bit why when you go to a massage therapist and they start working on a knot, it's like you want to talk. Like, I'm sure massage therapists, they feel like therapists because people just end up talking as they start to relax their tensions. It's the same with horses, and you can actually, part of my communication is to actually use my reins. The reins in the work, or the lead rope in the work, is actually to connect to the feeling of tension. It's not to manipulate movement. And as you make connection to feel, then you start talking to the story in a horse, not where they move that story. So moving a story is no different than you and I just doing a job, but not really connecting. And it's that connection that builds the depth. So a little bit of training there, but it's like that's really the goal, is to get to a place where we're able to feel the frequency, and then allow that to kind of lead us down a direction. And that takes a still mind, not a full mind. So having information necessitates even more stillness, because I feel like my process as an instructor has taken me through a couple different things, and one of them is, um, the more information you have, the easier it is to make judgments. So you're just, you see things, and it's like, oh yeah, blah 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 blah. Versus, but wisdom and depth come when I can have an information, but I sit still in the moment until the energy gives direction, and then the information has a pathway. But the more we just lay out information without feeling the path, it's more critical often. It's less than loving. It's often just information, but it sometimes falls flat. because it doesn't touch that flow and that path. So feeling frequency and sensing space to me is what horses do. But the reason they do it is because that's a higher form of communication. Um, and I'm trying to make that art, I guess.
Yeah, good. It's, yeah, we've noticed a lot of like program horses or tend to, not to overly generalize, but they will
Hmm.
sometimes lean to be more shut down
Hmm.
when they're not approached with these kind of philosophies. So I think
Hmm.
it's really empowering for whoever's doing, whether it's a therapist or a coach or a facilitator. And it's also just a great service to the horses. And at the end of the
Hmm.
day, because of this field you're talking about, this frequency, people get to experience that more, and it's better for everybody. It's better for the
Hmm.
therapist, it's better for the person receiving the work, and ultimately it's much better for the horses too. So yeah, I applaud those efforts.
Hmm.
On that note, how does worthiness affect our work as humans with horses?
Hmm. I think there are certain terms that are expressions of certain pillars. Um, Worthiness is often uprooted or rooted in certain base elements inside of each person. So if I have certain things that have happened in my life and traumas and struggles, it's very hard for me to have any sense of worthiness because there's nothing for me to stand on. So worthiness being an expression, it's like an expression of certain pillars, and a lack of worthiness is actually is an expression of those as lack. So I have found uh, fake support would be to encourage worthiness. You see, it's actually has nothing to stand on, so it just falls through a spaghetti sieve. It's like fake self-esteem. You can try to pump the tires, and you can try to, and sometimes that can be valuable, but if it has nothing to stand on, then it falls. Um, it would be like trying to pet our horse to tell them it's okay when they don't feel safe. You see, if it's like, why do they not feel safe? You must speak to that, and that's the empowerment purpose. So for me, worthiness is a beautiful expression of the process of doing the work. And if a person doesn't feel worthy, then it's an insightfulness to certain pillars that need to be restructured within them. Um, but it's a beautiful expression because you can't make someone feel worthy, and you can't make yourself feel worthy. As we do the work, it is a byproduct. So I love it when we start to see self-love and empowerment within, because then these are the fruits of it. These are the fruits. It's as if, so I love, we do lots of things with our horses, and there's no greater moment when you see a horse that was once scared walk into a challenging environment kind of with their chest puffed up. Like, it's like, no, they believe in themselves now. And that's a real act in our training, is to intend towards that. And it's the same with people. But to me, it's always about seeing what is under, and there's energetic flow to me of, primary, secondary, third levels of feel. And certain, so worthiness would be a secondary feel to a primary irregularity, you might say. So that's just a kind of a way that I look at certain things. It's to kind of envision that they're signs of things. And love and support, love and empathy are just actual pillars of walking, and that will allow people to feel a sense of connection in the space. But the goal is always to lead to, what does it mean to build those pillars? And you see signals as to whether or not those pillars are there or not. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's kind of like where that takes me.
Yeah, we're definitely picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got just a few more questions, but before we do that, could you share how folks can get in touch with you? Maybe any projects you've got in the hopper right now that you'd like people to know about?
For sure, I can. My website is my passion. We're doing our best to create a space that people can learn my work, and we're always building it more as I'm growing and shifting and getting better at presenting the information. That's a membership site. We've tried to put lots of stuff on YouTube for people to see the work. My intention is not to have people kind of spend money until they have a sense of that this is what they want. And then I've done a few different courses. I've done a course on fear, a course on the empowered by pressure, and then Carrie Lake and I did a course on the snow globe, which is processing change, processing the positives and negatives of change, which was a huge piece. I love collaborations. I love the uniqueness of what happens, even with the three of us here. As we connect and communicate in the right frequency, it's just cool things just happen. So, trying to promote that more. Yeah, and then we try to have as much presence on social media just to again build community. That's what that's really about, is just to keep supporting a safe space for people to grow with an empowered energy. I think that's it. Well, obviously clinics, I do that full time. Kind of forget to say that because it seems like that's the base. Where I find the greatest success is when people are able to go on the website, they get a sense of knowing me, they get to feel me and understand. Then they come and watch a clinic or watch something live. We're doing virtual clinics now too, where people can chime in live and watch me teach a clinic. For those kind of on a global scale that just don't have access and won't ever connect to a clinic, and then be able to go back to the website with that personal feel, because now the information is different because they've been able to be in the space. That's kind of the way we've gotten to it now, and we've been building that website now for, well, man, quite a long time, and just trying to dial it in and get better at presenting the information.
Okay. Yeah, I can relate to that. We'll make sure those links are in the liner notes too. So
Cool.
anybody's listening
Thank
and
you.
just wants to get quick access to
Mhm.
Josh Nichol, we'll make sure that's all down there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So we got three more questions for you. If you could distill down what's important about horses to only three things, what would they be?
Met needs, proper function, and connection. Without feeling their needs met, they just don't feel safe, and nothing works. Nothing, no training technique, no adventure that's supposed to be fun is fun. There's no sense of peace, and met needs bring peace. Proper function is that their bodies are worked in a way that honors their function. So I don't necessarily align with any discipline necessarily, because my goal is constantly to understand how their bodies work, move, and perform. And that just promotes longevity and soundness. And then by bringing that brings peace to their body, because I'm not putting them into positions that aren't natural to their movements, which then actually promotes their ability to be athletic. And then connection is just being able to be together in this world. When we take horses out of their natural environment, we put a responsibility on ourselves that now we are the advocate of their ability to be in this space. And so then, yeah, it's then a connection with us built around their needs, a connection with us built around how they move, and then how we relate to each other. So just kind of in a nutshell, when you can align with those things, there's very little you can't do, because the horse feels safe and empowered. And then they actually really enjoy being with you. And with connection, you have communication, and like secondaries flow off of those things. And then the world is kind of fun. And then you feel like you can kind of, I don't mean this exactly how it sounds, but you can attack the world. You can kind of go for it. You can put your head down and go, instead of feeling like every time you do, you're getting knocked over or everything's fall apart or whatever. And that right there is kind of like what we're trying to do.
When it comes to horses, someone or something you feel gratitude for?
The depth that the horses have allowed me to reveal in what it is to be me. Gratitude is a secondary expression of peace within. Um, hmm. um, it's a big one. That stillness that horses have helped me realize and see in my journey in life, and how that's impacted everything, how it's affected my marriage, how it's affected my raising my kids, sitting here and being with you guys, teaching, learning, all of the things that unlock deeper truths, develop gratitude as a byproduct. You see, and so that to me is, so gratitude is the byproduct of finding center and peace and stillness in who you are. All of a sudden you see the world with a sense of gratitude instead of scarcity. And then this is the challenge. So gratitude has actually been a byproduct of some of my meditation, which I have put charge over, which is why I'm struggling not to be emotional when you say that, because I'm actually actively putting charge over the term gratitude, because it's in gratitude that you have growth, because then you see movements then there's this beautiful energetic explosion of forward everything, because you're in the moment, moving forward instead of coming from back from a negative. I'm trying my best here. This is fun.
It's gorgeous, Josh.
Mhm.
It's so beautiful what you're
Mhm.
saying. I'm right there with you as you're exploring it. So
Mhm,
thank you
mhm,
for doing
mhm,
that.
You're welcome. It kind of goes back to the whole like practice being mindful of what you charge, and then what you charge, then you have these terms that actually bring charge, and then as they bring charge, it brings more forward fruit. And so it's like it's just a gratitude, abundance, love. Like these are terms you need to soak in and meditate till you can feel them in your fibers. And when you feel them in your fibers, it unlocks things in you that changes your life. And again, that's that whole professional meditator thing, is get mindful on what you're meditating and what you're charging. And when you start charging those things, you become different. Yeah, well, there's a kind of seeing it in action, I guess, but that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, get some goosebumps feeling it with you.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. So last question. This is I just love how you're taking in these questions, Josh, too, because I can tell they're like you're going there, which is amazing. So here's another doozy. And this is just maybe for today, like just one word to describe the kind of horse person you aspire to be.
Probably authentic. Just really like being real. I like being true. I like being true to myself. I like being in the moment. Uh, uh, I love being able to be raw and be real, and because that's where there's peace. There's just real peace when you can really get with yourself and be okay with what's happening. And uh, and the more authentic you are with your horses, and you don't have to be perfect. They don't ask that, but when you can be authentic, you can um, find stillness and peace with yourself. And so much in life, we are always trying to have an act, and that act causes tension, and that tension creates a distorted energy. Well, then everything around you feels distortion, and then we feel that distortion, so we act more, and it becomes this cycle of negative effects. But as we can get to that place where you lay out authenticity and you can be just who you are, and in its rawest form, you're just trying to find yourself, and when you do that with love and gratitude, dang, like these are heavy pillars now, you know, and those are true pillars that then have beautiful byproducts. And when you can stand on those byproduct or those pillars, excuse me, with an empowered state of mind, the byproducts just have such beautiful fruit. And you guys talked about ripples. Well, that stuff creates ripples, man. Because now it doesn't matter who you talk to or what you're doing. When you're just living that way, it just changes the frequency of your community and your world. Um, when I first started my website, I was nervous to do so, and I was just working through myself in it all. And I had two visions that came to me, and one was that of actually the work saving someone's life. Um, and I actually had affirmation of that after, and then it was more like, who am I not to do the work, versus who am I to do the work. And the other was this beautiful sense of this this scrolling, or this carpet that just went out, and that there's this beautiful impact, not just of my work but of anyone's work, when you honor your authentic calling, and that it's going to impact way bigger than you think. And you don't need to know it doesn't even matter. You don't need to know the impact, and the impact might not even come to you. You might never know. You might know sometimes and you might not, but it doesn't even matter. But when you authentically draw in and then express it out, it touches the earth. And that's so, yeah, I guess maybe that would be the term that would come to me with most power.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, thank you. You inspired me here
Yeah.
today. And
Cool.
Glad we got a chance to chat with you.
I'm glad. I'm happy to do so, and it's been a blessing to be in your guys' space as well.
Josh, I just want to recognize you. We'll tie it back to the hero's quest. Like you're exemplifying somebody who answered the call. It takes a lot of courage to lean into that vulnerability. I know how hard it is to put up a site and try to create a membership, and people kind of gloss over that. It takes so much inner work. It takes so much congruency to do things like that. You have obviously helped so many people. Like you said, it can be life-saving work when you come at it at this level. Just your heart, like we can feel it here. I mean, we're tuning through the airwaves during this conversation. I just want to recognize you, the impact you're having on the world. I know it's not always easy, so keep at it. You're doing the work.
Thank you.
We see you.
Yeah.
We feel
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
I hope you enjoyed the show today. We'd love for you to join our free Substack community for The Herd is Calling. Connect with us, engage in thoughtful discussions, and access exclusive content. Click the link nearby to subscribe. It's so easy and totally free. We appreciate you listening, and as always, may the horse be with you.